I will have the board secretary take roll to establish a quorum.
Thank you. President Craighead.
Here.
Member Benitez.
Present.
Member Lopez.
Present.
Member Miller.
Here.
Member Otto.
Here.
And student member Aguilar.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And next, I will ask our student representative from Sato, Summer Phillips, to lead us in the pledge.
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For those of you present in the room, the board appreciates and supports community input at our meetings. During the meeting, there will be time for public to comment on matters on the agenda and matters not listed on the agenda. For those who have not already submitted a request, we have provided forms in the back of the room, actually over here at the side with our board secretary. If you wish to speak during the meeting, please fill out a form indicating your name and the agenda item you wish to address. The board has been meeting in closed session regarding matters listed on today's agenda and took action on the following items. Item 3.1, conference with legal counsel. Existing litigation, the board voted 5-0 to approve a final settlement agreement in OAH case number 202-3070871, providing consideration, accommodations, and a general release. And item 3.2, confidential student matters, pursuant to California Education Code 35146, the board voted 5-0 to lift the expulsion of student ID number 9985 and assign the student to a school or instructional program as recommended by the Office of Student Placement Services. Adoption of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? And how about our student representative with a preferential vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. And now we will formally introduce our student from Sato, Ms. Summer Phillips. So if you can come to the microphone, and I'm sure we're all going to be anxious to hear about what's happening at Sato.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Board of Education, parents, students, and any fellow dragons who may be viewing this tonight. My name is Summer Phillips, and I'm currently a senior at Sato Academy of Math and Science in the engineering pathway. Today, I am honored to represent my school as a student, a friend, and as ASP president. I'm very pleased to share with you all about our Sato community. To begin, I would like to talk briefly about my school. What even is Sato? I know a lot of people that I've talked to have no idea what our small new school is. It's hard to simplify it, but I'll give it my best shot. Sato was named after the first Japanese and woman mayor of Long Beach, Eunice Sato. It is a small, specialized school offering only 2 pathways, general engineering and biomedical engineering. Students that go to Sato tend to be very engaged in academics, and the teachers are just as dedicated. A young institution, only having been open for 9 years and only graduating 5 classes so far, Sato has done very well for itself, boasting incredible test scores, ranking top 15 of public high schools in all of California, and placing regionally and nationally in biomedical and engineering competitions for clubs and organizations such as HOSA, robotics, drone soccer, and Skills USA. More than that, Sato considers itself a college preparatory academy in which students are taught core skills that will be useful throughout the entirety of their lives. The main four of such skills are creative innovator, collaborative communicator, problem solver, and accomplished industry professional. These are what we like to call at SADO our 4 student outcomes. SADO's curriculum is built around fostering and furthering these skills in each student, hoping to guide them to becoming a responsible and capable young adult by the time they graduate. One of my personal favorite things about SADO is the small, tight-knit community. I love walking around campus and being surrounded by familiar faces. I love knowing the people in my classrooms and that I do group work with. I love knowing people from all grade levels and interacting with them in clubs and cross-grade academic courses. Another benefit of having such a small community is the equally small class sizes. It's truly a blessing to have teachers that know you and make an effort to make sure that you're comfortable asking for help whenever you need it. With our school-wide unscheduled Period 8, there is also no lack of opportunity to get tutoring and homework help. Though all students are allowed to leave during this time, many if not most students take full advantage of their time during Period 8 to work on assignments, study for tests, and do group work, maximizing their time at school and increasing time efficiency. One application of Period 8 that has been very beneficial for me is meeting with my engineering group to work on our big capstone project. There have been numerous times where we have met with prestigious college professors and industry professionals to gain invaluable insight and assistance on our project. Outside of academics, I love that SADO encourages students to pursue their passions, even if it extends outside of medicine or engineering. This year, there are over 40 clubs, majority of which are independent of pathway objectives, founded by underclassmen and upperclassmen alike that are exploring their passions and sense of identity. Everyone knows that it can be hard to make a new environment feel like your own, and coming into SADO as a freshman on Zoom, I knew that I would be no exception. It has been quite a task to balance self-exploration with academics thus far, but the community I have found at SADO has been nothing but supportive throughout my journey. I like to think that I've made the school my own now, but it took a lot of trial and error to get here. Right now, I serve as our ASB's president and co-chair of communications, dance club president, and Black Student Union secretary. Before that, I've been a member in our HOSA chapter, surf club, speech and debate club, culinary club, volleyball club, and many, many more. Outside of clubs, I'm very passionate about dancing, photography, videography, singing, and writing, and I'm glad to have met friends at school that share the same passions as me. Right now, me and a few of my friends are spearheading a documentary project highlighting the experience of our SADO seniors in their last weeks at the school. For people like me who have a plethora of interests outside of our academic coursework, the multitude of specialized clubs offer a community to engage with the things we love. And, as ASB president, I couldn't finish this speech without touching on our amazing associated student body. Since the school year started just a little over a month ago, SADO ASB has hosted Dragon Fest, which tends to be our biggest event of the year, Senior Sunrise, and Club Rush. All of these events have been overwhelmingly successful. A handful of us also attended a joint school leadership camp with Lakewood High School in McBride just a few days ago. It was amazing to bounce ideas off of each other, hear and witness new perspectives, meet new friends, and cheer so loud I actually lost my voice. SADO ASB typically joins forces with other small schools in the area biannually for our winter formal and prom, and we're currently working on our fall semi-formal and haunted horror night. With the help of our ASB advisor, Miss Oliver, and office and school staff like Miss Coleman, Miss Stephanie, Miss Magnolia, Miss Jackie, Cisco, and Victor, we are able to plan over 30 events to help students enjoy each school year. After 3 years and more in the SADO community, I can say that I'm familiar with the importance of community on a whole new level. The family I've built on campus is something most precious to me, and I will do my best as ASB president to ensure that I leave the school better than I found it. I thank you all at the LBUSD Board of Education, from board members to the staff that helps make it all happen, for having me tonight. Thank you, and go Dragons!
Would you like to acknowledge somebody special in the audience that maybe is here to support you?
Well, my mom is here today. She actually took off of a very important meeting to come and support me, so I'm very happy that she came. Thank you, Mama.
And also, well, I was going to say before you sit down, but I missed that. if you could come up here, and then we'll get pictures with you before we go on with the agenda. I don't know where Summer has time for the actual curriculars because of all the extracurriculars. But you know what, Summer, I'm going to ask you another question. So visit that microphone once more. This is the time of year when seniors are looking at next year, even though we're just starting this school year. But do you have some dream schools?
My mom wants me to say USC because she went there. I actually don't have a dream school. I'm still, part of the reason why I did so many extracurriculars was to try to figure out what I wanted to pursue. So I'm still in the midst of that, but I think any place that I choose to go to will be beneficial for me in the long run, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we wish you luck, and we know you're going to do real well.
Thank you.
But thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, one last round of applause for Summer. There we go. Oh, okay. We're going to keep the fun rolling with a presentation for our Teacher of the Year. I know. Mr. Ryan Ung.
Well, I don't know how to follow that. I wish I would have gone earlier. So, good evening, members of the board, Board President Craig Head, senior staff, and Superintendent Dr. Baker. My name is Ryan Ung. I am a program specialist in OCIPD and also the Teacher of the Year coordinator. We are here this evening, as you know, to celebrate a very special moment and a great accomplishment of our 2023-24 Teacher of the Year winner. But before we do that, I know we're all in anticipation because I want Thomas to come up here, but before we do that, I want to explain the district's rigorous selection process so that you have an understanding of what Thomas had to do in order to get to where he's at today. So our district rigorous Teacher of the Year process is aligned with the Los Angeles County competition. First and foremost, all teachers that are candidates must be nominated by either a staff, a colleague, and a site administrator. All candidates must complete an extensive application process, which requires them to submit multiple essays to highlight their exemplary dedication, their compelling classroom practices, their community involvement, their passionate professional accomplishment, and their continued commitment to the students, parents, and staff, and the community as a whole. After the application is submitted to OCIPD, we have a selection committee comprised of former Teacher of the Year winners who reviews the application, scores it with a rubric, and ultimately select our winner. After this selection, our district winner then proceeds on to the Los Angeles County competition. Now, the Los Angeles County Teacher of the Year program is the largest of its kind in the state. It is the oldest and most esteemed recognition of teacher excellence. So to celebrate Thomas's great accomplishment, we've put together, I say we, I didn't do a lot of the work, Chris put together this short video just to show all the
I'm also a tennis coach, the CT department head, and a bunch of other stuff at the school, and I'm this year's Teacher of the Year. It's rewarding, it's kind of a program is, but there's a right way to do it where you're kind of giving the students the freedom to explore both in that sector, but also what that sector touches. A student may not become an engineer in our pathway, but they're going to have to deal with technology in whatever career field, so it's important to keep it very broad. So being the CT department head, I do a lot of work around building curriculum across all 4 years, and so it's nice to see those freshmen start, and then when they get to me their senior year, I've seen them grow and progress. I've seen them take leadership roles their senior year. 2 summers ago, I took a bunch of the seniors who are would-be seniors that were in the CTE program, and they really put together kind of the blueprint for that career day that we had last year. And so we try to give them those, just opportunities in general to try to give them, the things that they've been asking for.
So to commemorate Mr. Thomas McAmee's excellence, I want to present to him a beautiful canvas portrait that will be displayed. It will be displayed in the foyer of the board building. The reason why it's displayed there is because we want to make sure that anyone who passes through the building remembers why we go into this profession. And we want to always remember that the reason why students are as successful as they are is because of teachers like Mr. McAmee. So without further ado, I want Thomas to come up here. We can give him a round of applause to say a few words.
Well, she already left, so now I don't feel so bad. And I do know that they didn't sleep at that retreat. That's what we were told today, so. First, thank you. I do teach CTE and computer science, but I began as an English teacher. So I'm going to take you all on a little extended metaphor, so bear with me. The most difficult game in the arcade is the pinball machine. It takes patience, precision, practice, and great attention to detail. It requires an intense balancing of pace, juggling of circumstances, overcoming obstacles, and constant laser focus. And after the physical, mental, and emotional toll of the game, it rarely offers tangible rewards of any kind. The player plays for the moments when the lights light up. They play for the opportunity to advance the game itself. They play knowing that even though guiding that little ball will be difficult and frustrating, it will also be worthwhile and fulfilling. They play because it calls to them. The pinball machines are often off to the side, with little fanfare, fighting for players to continue to see their purpose. We need more pinball players. We need more people cheering on those pinball players, and we need to start making sure that those machines offer more rewards. Those rewards don't have to be piles of tokens and tickets. They can be simple signs of gratitude. Too many will go their entire career playing pinball in the corner without anyone ever seeing their high score, skill, or pure joy for the game. We need to make sure that those players are seen and rewarded because playing pinball is hard. I want to thank those who have taken note of my pinball playing, those who nominated me, the selection committee, and the district for this honor. I want to thank the many excellent pinball players who have taught and inspired me over the years, and a special thanks to those colleagues who have become good friends. I want to thank this section, and that I forgot I had an overflow. I want to thank my parents for instilling in me an importance in education and supporting my journey to where I am today. I want to thank my 2 children who have adjusted the way I teach, who teach me things about myself, and for putting up with my high expectations. And I want to thank my wife for being the best partner at home so that I can do my best at school. Thank you for putting up with this pinball player. Each pinball machine is unique. Each has its own story. Each requires the player to use what they've done in the past to thrive in the present. Remember, pinball players, you are inspiring future players every day. They may play newer, more high-tech games, but the basic skills from pinball are the same throughout the arcade. Basic skills are basic because they form the foundation. Playing pinball is not an outdated game. On the contrary, it's never been more important. Thank you for your time, and thanks again for the recognition. I got emotional only because I know she was, so.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have you come around, and we'll have an opportunity to shake your hands, and then we're gonna ask you to come up here so we can do pictures. So we'll just have a brief moment for that. Yes. And also, I'd like to add that you are a teacher at Lakewood, but you are also an alum of Lakewood. That is your alma mater, your high school alma. And as a testament to how wonderful you are as a father, your own daughter attends Lakewood High School. So if she doesn't mind sharing a campus with you, I think that kind of says a lot, you know? So you've achieved success in many ways. Now, we welcome you to stay with us for the duration of our meeting, which, or you can feel free to leave and celebrate or whatever you like. You truly deserve it. But thanks for being here. Okay, that brings us to public testimony on items on the agenda. Oh, we do not have any speakers for items on the agenda, so we do have people who would like to speak for items not listed on the agenda. Please note that due to California law The board cannot enter into a discussion on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members or staff may ask clarifying questions or provide clarification regarding public comments, but such discussion is limited. And just a reminder, each speaker has 3 minutes. We will start with Vernon Van.
Good evening, everyone. I actually was waiting for my daughter to return. However, I guess if I'm put on the spot, I will say what I have to. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vernon Van. I'm a member in this community, and I am here to say what I have to regarding our transgender children. First of all, regarding them, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're incredible. You are more than a conqueror, and I love you with all of my heart. I want you to understand that. That's number one. Second of all, regarding these children, unfortunately, there has been intimidation, manipulation, and indoctrination, which is very, very unfortunate. The perverse things in which they're being taught in the schools, one should be ashamed of. I'm very disappointed and very angry that this is taking place. It needs to stop. I'll give you a good example. If I were to say to the average adult, I want you to get on your knees and to act like a dog. Well, most people would look at me like I'm crazy and I'm completely out of my mind, and rightfully so. But if I took that person as a child and I groomed them and I taught them that it was okay to be a dog and say, whatever you like to do, that's perfectly fine. By the time that they are an adult, they will be manipulated to the point where I can snap my fingers, they would get on the ground and bark like a dog. That's unfortunate that this is taking place within the school district. It's very unfortunate. The book of Proverbs 18:21 says, life and death are in the power of the tongue, and those that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. So simply by you telling them and encouraging them to be these things, that's essentially what they're going to end up being. Now, this is spiritual warfare. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not fighting this in the flesh. This is spiritual warfare that's taking place. We're fighting against principalities, against spiritual wickedness in high places. But in the name of Jesus, we have got the victory. We have got the victory. Now, in reference to religion, most people here are religious. They're atheists. Even if so, they still have a sense of morality. In your California Educational Code 233.5, it says, quote, teachers shall impress upon the minds of the pupils the principles of morality, truth, and avoid falsehood. Matthew 12:37 says, for by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. I want to simply leave you with this. God is not dead in the name of Jesus. But I will say this. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. I bless you in the mighty name of Jesus.
Thank you. Next, we have Greg West.
Good evening. I'm here to ask the board to remove the transgender policy that is currently in place in Long Beach School District. The current district policy allows students who are minors to request the schools to change their name to one of the opposite sex, to change their pronoun to the opposite sex, to access bathrooms and changing rooms of the opposite sex, and to receive counseling that supports a gender change, all without permission or knowledge of the parent. I repeat, all without permission or knowledge of parents. Those who would oppose dropping this policy would say that you cannot notify the parents because there are abusive parents, and that the school district must protect the students from these abusive parents. But to this, I would say that the district already has mandated policies in place to involve social services and law enforcement in cases where there are abusive parents. The truth is that there are far more loving parents in the district that care more about their children than any teacher, principal, or board member. The parents need to be involved in any situation that could have physical or psychological life-changing effects on their children. So the truth is that the current policy that hides information from parents is actually creating a situation where students will be hurt. Now, we all know that the Attorney General of California announced a lawsuit against the Chino Valley School District over its policy calling for parents to be notified if their children seeks to change his or her gender identity. However, this September, U.S. District Judge Robert Benitez blocked the Escondido School District's transgender student policy that was hiding this information about students' gender identities from their parents. Also, the Spreckles Union School District in Monterey County settled a lawsuit by agreeing to pay $100,000 for convincing an 11-year-old student to identify as bisexual and later as transgender without informing her parents. So it's easy to see that the legal system is ruling in favor of keeping parents involved. In conclusion, I would like to ask the board to put this topic on their agenda for a future board meeting, to remove their current transgender policy and replace it with a policy that would require schools to notify parents if they become aware of students wanting to change their genders in order to provide the necessary parental involvement to keep their children safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Samia Mohammed.
Hi, my name is Samia. On behalf of the Muslims of the entire state of California, I stand before you today to urge you to, I'm so sorry. I stand before you today with an urgent plea to reconsider the trajectory of the schools that are taking shape of the values and the beliefs of our children. I wish to address the matter of grave concern that revolves around the promotion of the LGBTQ agenda and the approval of transgender or sex change provided procedures within our educational institutions without the knowledge or consent of the parents. First and foremost, the moral concerns raised by the parents cannot be dismissed lightly. These parents worry that that certain aspects of the LGBTQ agenda may conflict with their moral compass, infringement on our democratic separation of church and state. This takes away the rights of the parents and keeps secrets and creates division and mistrust within the family households, as well as confusion of our religious beliefs. It is your job as the district to maintain the education system of our children in that you teach them math, general education, science, and not to worry about what our kids want to become in the aspect of sexual identification. It is not your worry, but our concern as parents, whether our kids are taught to agree or disagree with sexual orientations. I urge you to stop hypersexualizing our children and to stop getting our children to talk to strangers about their sexual identification, as well as grooming them into thinking that these are norms. Kids are very impressionable souls and are learning every single day. And if we put these decisions in their hands, they will make poor decisions for themselves. And that is why it is the role of the parents to guide them and nurture them as they see fit, not as you see fit, according to our beliefs, not your beliefs. As I have said before, it is not fair to have our kids adhere to your belief systems if we do not impose our belief systems on your kids as well. You cannot stay on one side of the fence. As Americans, we must realize that you cannot force your belief systems on someone just because it's what's trending at the moment. If students want to deal with their sexuality,
I'm sorry, but your time is up.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Next, we have Jamesa.
Evening. Jamisa is my secretary, and for some reason she's stuck in the traffic, is the system allowed me to take her turn if I introduce my name and my phone number, or we gonna just cancel her. It's up to you guys. I didn't need more than. She's here already. I'm sorry.
Assalamu alaikum, bismillah. My name is Umisa. I represent my faith as a Muslim woman. I represent humanity as the family of Adam and Eve, the first woman on earth. And I come here to tell you a little story about a boy in my neighborhood. He's 10. He tells me he's bisexual. I said, Jimmy, are you ready to have sex? He said, no. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, I don't know. It's because his brain is not fully developed. Let these kids grow up. Let us raise them. We're their parents, right? Do you have parents? Did your parents raise you? The truth is that this is lies. The reason why you want to make this law pass, and I just found out about it today that this meeting was happening. The reason why you want this law to pass is because you want our children to be remaining in this state of an underdeveloped brain that hasn't even developed mature enough to drive a car. Let's give them all cars too. How about that? Let's let them drink alcohol too. You guys down with that? Nobody? But let's let them change their entire nature. Things that we don't even know the consequences of. Because why? We want these children alone, confused, not able to function in society, committing suicide because they made a mistake when their brain wasn't fully developed. The other thing is that I'm a Muslim woman. There's Muslim young ladies here. There's other women of different faiths here that need privacy and protection from the physical creation of a man. You guys are different. In our book, it says Allah made, when Jesus was born, peace be upon him, and they thought that his mother was going to be the savior. In our holy book, the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in our holy book, the Quran, when Jesus, peace be upon him, was born, when his mother was born, they were expecting the savior. But when she was born a woman, they laughed. They said, this is not true. There's no Jesus coming. They were mocking the prophets after they killed off many of them. So after that happened, guess what happened? Allah knows what was in the womb. Before you guys decided to give the child that is still not a grown-up, that is still under the care of us, parents in the room, concerned that you're trying to take away our God-given, human-given parental rights that Adam and Eve had over their children. The woman is different than the man. I wear a scarf. I cannot handle myself against a man the same way that I can handle myself against a woman. If I'm in a corner in a bathroom alone with a man that was born to be a man with his strength, I can't take off my scarf. I can't do certain things. So I would like you guys to consider our rights
sorry,
as well, and not.
Your time is up. Your time is up. You had 3 minutes. Thank you. Next, we have Eric Jensen.
My name is Eric Jensen. I have 3 kids in the school system, so this is a very important issue to me. I recently went to the open houses at both the middle school and the elementary school, and I was pleased to see there wasn't too many things that were in the classrooms or all over the school representing pride or this transgender movement that we're trying to push. But I did see a little bit on the math chart right at the headers for my elementary schools where they put their name and said every single day, breaking up full, half, quarters, and it had the rainbow flag on it right there. So that right there is just trying to push an issue that none of us here believe with, and we would really like even that removed. There was posters inside of the classroom that said we accept all walks of life, genders, religions, but yet I don't see every other gender or religions being represented like they are for the LGBTQ community. I also am worried about the bathroom policy. Like she stated, if a man was to come in, even if he's identifying as a woman that day, there can be a lot of issues because there's already existing issues within the bathrooms. Smoking, vaping, fighting. There's a lot of fights in the schools alone man on man, woman on woman. So now we're mixing them and putting them in a place where there is no supervision in there. That's a very, very concerning issue. We have rape going up, all these different things because of these issues that we're pushing. Why isn't every group supported, like I said before? These are the things that really bother me. We should be spending this money and resources should be spent on music, art, sports, handwriting, reading different types of materials to progress these children instead of teaching them about sexuality. We should give them things to value, to make a difference in their life, but this is not making a difference in their life. It's creating more confusion and more chaos that they don't need at this very transitional time in their life. They were just locked down from COVID. They're trying to figure out how to get together and talk and communicate and be in a classroom together. And now we're throwing in a whole nother set of ideals that really confuse them, that they haven't heard about before, that they don't need to be dealing with. And I just really want to let you guys know to put this on the calendar if you can, because we're going to be here month after month after month continuously talking about these policies until we see a change or somebody doing something about these policies. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the platform that you guys allow us.
Thank you. Shafiga?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shafiga Saeed. I'm a speech pathologist, and I'm here to talk about this issue where I'm a parent. I'm pretty sure everyone here is a parent too, and I believe the values that we have, we try to pass down to our kids, and that's what we all do. So, and as the First Amendment, it does say that everyone is a freedom of speech. So if it's our right to have our religion and we can practice it the way we want, and then we take our kids to school, we trust you guys with our kids. Our kids comes to school, you guys are their second parents. All teachers are their kids' second parents, and then all of a sudden everything is different. Let me tell you a story. There's an 80-year-old who comes home and tell their parent that today at school, I was told that I could be whatever I want. I could change if I want to be a female. I could do that, and I don't have to tell my parent, and I don't have to listen to my parent. So what if I told you this story is true? There is a kid that was told that at school. So as teachers, we're telling kids that they should not listen to your parents. We're grooming them from a really young age that whatever you were told to believe in yourself, and then when they grow up, they cannot do anything because they're so used to being told this is what you have to be. And then we expect these kids are our future. In a couple of years, all of us are not going to be here, but these kids, they're going to run the country one day. And then we expect these kids who were groomed at a really young age, how are they going to run this country? How are we going to have it? We need a change. We need better leadership as teachers. If I'm bringing my kid to you, I expect you to respect my religion and teach them what you have to teach them, but in a right way. Just like I don't go to school and force them to be Muslims. I don't do that because I respect their religion. I respect their belief. So I would request as teachers, as board members, if you have our kids, you need to respect our religion. It's okay if other people, I respect other parents' belief, and if they feel like maybe their kids would like to turn into a different gender, that's fine if they would like to do that. But why do we do that to all parents? All of us here, not only my religion, there's so many religions that does that do not believe this. If I ask over here with the hand of rights, just you guys sitting here, do you guys support this? But then just as person, not because you're a part of the board member, personally, do you believe that this is right? I'm pretty sure some of you will answer, especially female, as a mother or as a father, I'm pretty sure your answer would be no. But just because it's, as someone said before, it's trending right now. Everyone is doing it, why not? I used to work for the district before, and I used to work for kids, junior high school kids with developmental delay, and I had a kid with he was going through things because he was groomed at a young age to believe things like this. All right, I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. So next on the agenda, we have reports on our superintendent advisory groups. And this is something new that we haven't had on the agenda yet, but the board meets in different committees, and each board member serves on at least one committee, and we are now starting this procedure where we report out on the committee. So that's what we're attempting to do this evening. And we're going to start with the Business, Budget, and Policy Development, advisory group. And so as per a previous conversation, we talked about board policies having to do with compliance issues coming to this advisory group if they're compliance related, and then the board members serving on this group will preview the policies, and then those policies come to the rest of the board in our board packet prior to the next meeting. So our first report will be Dr. Benitez reporting on business, budget, and policy development.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, colleagues, by our next board meeting, we will have 2 policies for your consideration. Pretty straightforward. Policy 5111, that's policy 5111, is a standard enrollment required by California. Our district complies and has been doing this by practice, but we don't have a policy. So all this is doing is codifying our enrollment processes in adherence with state requirements. Second, and we will all receive these prior to our next board meeting for review. Policy 3230 regards federal grants. Again, we already practice these requirements from the feds. So this policy would codify and would be in line with what the federal government and federal government grants require us to do when receiving monies and grants and when monitoring that. So we need a policy to be in compliance with that. So policy 3230 would codify our practices in receipt of federal grant funds and in the monitoring of the federal grant funds. So just giving my colleagues a heads up that we will receive these prior to the next board meeting for our consideration. That's my report, Madam Chair. How'd I do?
I believe you stayed under that 2 minutes, so I'm impressed. That was our guideline. We're going to try and stay. I know. Yeah, I thought it was really well done. And next, we have instruction and student learning supports. Ms. Lopez.
So we met, and there are 2 grants. There's the California Technical Education Incentive Grant for $3.7 million that supports busing for students to participate in work-based learning. It provides additional counseling work with students that are historically underrepresented and provides aids to support students. The K-12 Strong Workforce Program, a $2 million grant over a span of 3 years, supports work-based learning aligned to high school pathways, supporting experiences for students to gain greater understanding of career options. And so this was based on questions that I had in regards to both of these grants. So one of them, I wanted to know how we would expand opportunities for non-traditional students and students with exceptional needs. And so what I read is what was reported to me. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, we have workforce development. Mr. Miller.
Thank you. So in our meeting, it was fairly clear. We really just looked at a hiring snapshot of the district thus far. The district has hired 312 new hires that are certificated employees, which was important not just from a macro level, right? Because we can talk about how many new hires, but really it was about how the district has taken additional efforts to mirror the demographic of our cities and our students in particular. And so one of the things that was pretty empowering is that we looked at our 2019 numbers that, in all honesty, had a lot of room for improvement, but we saw a trend over the past 3 years where we've seen improvements in both our African American demographics and our Latinx hiring. And so this year, I'm happy to report that we've seen the largest growth in about 5% in new hires for our Latinx. So that was really, really impressive. So I wanted to give a big shout out to the HR team there. One of the things that I was also discussing with Kellyanne was their upcoming work in mirroring the district's goals. We're talking about our board goals and the superintendent goals with some of our hiring practices. So they're going to do their HR retreat starting tomorrow. So that is going to be the undertone of that work. Along those lines, we talked a little bit about some of the district's professional development work that they've been doing thus far, or at least some of the programs that we have in place. And one of the things that I was informed about, which I don't know if you all were aware, that we have 22 different professional development opportunities for both certificated and classified employees. And last but not least, from CTC perspective, the district is working on becoming an admin credential agency, so it can be working on giving people that credential within the Long Beach Unified School District. So a lot of really, really good work.
Great, thank you. As you can see, we keep our senior staff very busy, especially on meeting days. And then 13.4, student outcome focused governance. That committee did not meet, but Mr. Moskowitz, would you like to address that?
Sure, thank you, President Craighead. So as you was referenced a moment ago, the board goals and guardrails is up for further discussion this evening. So once, no pressure, but once the board lands on the board goals, we will be prepared to look at those metrics that we will then be bringing to the board as part of our ongoing assessment of our district progress towards those goals. And as part of that, we will set up a monitoring calendar, and as part of that monitoring calendar, we'll be meeting with the Student Outcome Focused Governance Superintendent's Advisory Group, and then we'll set up a calendar for that as well. So kind of flow down board goals, then we'll set up the monitoring calendar with the board meetings, and then we'll be meeting with the governance group to come up with our ongoing support and ongoing meetings.
Thank you. So no pressure, board goals, that's, okay. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have our consent calendar. And this consent calendar groups the approval of routine agenda items into one action for efficiency, and it allows the board to focus our meetings more on student outcomes and other key issues of the district. So I will have our board secretary take a roll call. We didn't have a motion.
Move approval.
Right.
Second.
Does anybody have a question or discussion on the consent? You do.
Madam Chair, if we could have one of the members of our executive team speak to item 14.5, and specifically, I'm wondering about, and these are items we have listed under grants and grant proposals, items 10, 11, 12. I'm curious as to the impact that these proposals and or grants would have. Noticing language like there will be an increase in number, students' participation in, and supports. So, Dr. Lund?
Of course. Thank you, Dr. Benitez. As Board Member Lopez alluded to, these two grants really work in tandem together to support our linked learning pathways, work-based learning experiences, industry certification, CTE completion, and dual enrollment opportunities. So some of the funding opportunities, as Board Member Lopez had alluded to, provides teachers collaboration time to support this ongoing work in terms of industry-themed projects, supporting students with industry theme visitations, field trips, if you will. It could include support as we expand dual enrollment opportunities, providing aids in the classroom to support students who would be historically underrepresented in a dual enrollment course to make sure that they are successful in doing so. This could include workplace tours and college visits that support this work. So that's where the funding generally goes. Last year, our students, these are ongoing grants. This is not a new grant to our system. So these are ongoing grants that continue to support our work. Last year, 85% of our high school students had at least one work-based learning experience. The median was about 3 experiences each student, totaling about 10 hours each. At the high end, and I'm going to reference our student presentation today, you heard her make reference to some of the specific skills trainings that she's experienced at SADO. She referenced HOSA and Skills USA, for example, which is specifically referencing leadership skills in support of future workplace experiences. Summer Phillips in particular has over 400 hours of experience, work-based learning experience in her career so far at SADO. At the high end, we have a student from McBride at 2,300 hours. So you can see there's a full gamut of experiences depending on the pathway that they're in and the experiences that are being provided. Our Teacher of the Year, Thomas McNamee, also kind of referenced his coursework in the video presentation. He is a CTE teacher, and he teaches the capstone course. And he talked about his experience seeing students from freshman through senior year, which really references the sort of like a pathway that students go through in their CTE completion. He works at Lakewood in the ATM program, which has one of our highest completions of all of our pathways actually at our high school level. So there you see 2 vivid examples of a teacher and a student specifically reference work connected to the linked learning pathway system and the work-based learning experiences in particular that these 2 grants support.
I have a question on item 14.6. Numbers 1, 4, 5, 8, and 16 are all contracts for buses to take students to Camp Oaks, each of them in the amount of $25,000 for a total of $125,000. My question is, do we have our own bus drivers? And if so, how many we have?
The district currently does not have its own bus drivers. We vend transportation services for our students with disabilities for home to school transportation.
And number 22, can you explain the interim housing project at Jordan High School for the $86,387,237 for the next 5 years?
So we're really excited about this particular project and agreement with CW Driver Construction. And just as a reminder, for any of our construction projects at this scale in particular, we have our general contractors compete at 2 levels, right? So first they compete for placement on a pre-qualified list of contractors. Next, they compete for the specific project. And that's what happened in this scenario. The excitement for us is because this is not only the next phase of construction for Jordan High School, it's the last phase. Right, so we've been undergoing quite a bit of construction. We know it's disruptive, but the end product is amazing. The project itself still breaks up into 3 subcomponents, and they're a little confusing, so I'm glad you called me up. It's broken up into what we call Phase 5A, Phase 5B, and Phase 6, and they do not go in that sequential order. So, of course. So Phase 5A includes a new synthetic track and field surface for the school, quite a bit of work with regards to their stadium complex. So new home side bleachers, new concession stands, new food service facilities, ticket booths, lighting, and restrooms, right? So that phase in and of itself, phase 5A, is the first one that would start in the early stages of 2024. Large project in and of itself. Then we transfer into phase 6, as we call it, and there's a little bit of overlap. We would start that in the fall of 2024. But that includes their new gymnasium facility, locker room facility, aquatic center, which also includes new scoreboards, bleachers, lighting, and so forth. Another massive lift for the campus. We would finish off with phase 5B, right? So there's the funky sequence there. And that would be work on basically the remaining portion of the athletic complex, work on the visitor side of the stadium project. So visitor side bleachers, team rooms, restrooms, and so on, but also work in the final removal of interim housing portables. So we know we created a portable village for that particular campus just to be able to allow us to do work on the various phases of construction on the site and allowing us to keep students on site. That final phase is the ultimate removal of every one of those interim housing portables. And then we would repurpose that space with fields. So they would, in essence, get a new softball field, new soccer field for practice and PE functions. Large project, though.
Thank you. And I think this question might be for you as well. My last question. Item 23, the 25 schools that are that were selected to get shade. How are the schools selected? And then can we put a list of those schools like on the website, or is that maybe something that we already have?
Let's see. Is this item 25?
It's just it's the phasing
Oh, okay,
of
the
the
phasing for our
complete-
shade structures. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
So in total, shade structures across the district at a number of campuses, really every campus, we've completed several. I think off the top of my head, it's roughly 20 or so that we completed to date. This was installation of shade structures across a 3-year period. We have updated our bonds website now with our project timeline. And for many years, we had included several of our large capital improvements, our bond modernization efforts, our new construction efforts like the one I just described. But previously, we hadn't included projects like shade structures, drinking water filler stations, playground structures, and now we've incorporated that into the overall timeline. So that does show up on the lbschoolbonds.net website.
And also, just to put a plug in, this is part of our Learning Acceleration Support Plan, the investment in infrastructure. And so these are COVID relief funds that will ensure that all of the schools have a shade structure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I just want to thank our volunteers for stepping up to serve on the CAC. Ariana Garcia, Amelia Castellanos, Ceremony Fan, Deidre Blair Saldana, Aaron De Fuentes, and Martha McCoy. So thank you for doing that. And now I will call on our board secretary to take a roll call vote.
Thank you. Member Benitez?
A. B. I.
Thank you. President Craighead?
I'll go with I.
Member Lopez?
Aye.
Member Miller?
Aye.
Member Otto?
C. Aye.
And student member preferential vote?
Aye.
Thank you. That passes 5-0.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, next on the agenda, we have our board governance, board goals, and guardrails. So I know we all have our notes on that. This agenda item is a continuation of a discussion we had at our last meeting as a workshop that happened in the morning before our previous board meeting. And what we've been working on for, I guess, the last 3 years is our board governance. And we know that what we do as a board will directly impact our students. And so we've been working on changing the agenda, changing how we do things, and now we're going to be adopting goals and guardrails this evening so that we can have a more focused approach to our board governance. So what we've done to this point is we've engaged with the community, we've done work amongst ourselves, and our goal for the goals is to adopt 3 goals for the next 5 years, and that's what we're going to be taking a look at over the next 5 years. We're going to be focused on that. We're going to be monitoring that. We've been talking about that for quite a while now. At our last meeting, we whittled it down to 4. Tonight, we're going to whittle it down to 3, and we're going to adopt 3 goals. So I'm going to start out the conversation by saying that, and I'm addressing my colleagues here, I'm going to start out the conversation by saying that after reading over the goals that we have, it seems like goal number 2 can serve as an interim goal to goal number 1. I don't know if anybody else shares that opinion, or if somebody else wants to either add to that or add something different. Dr. Benitez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have 2 thoughts on that. First thought is that we're using 2 different assessments for goal 1 and 2. So I worry about us using multiple assessments for one goal. And the second is goal 2 focuses on a target population of those students that are 2 or more grade levels below on our iReady assessments. Goal 1 doesn't have a student group population as a target. So I don't know how we would both focus on a subgroup population and make sure that we also continue to anchor this work around our equity gaps, because as I read goal 1, it's our overall percentage of grade 3 students, not necessarily a subgroup of them.
Okay, I see what you're saying there, and to me, it seemed like with goal 2, we have the iReady. iReady is more of a leading indicator. I'm going to reference Dr. C. Brown. A leading indicator, the SBAC is a lagging indicator. And so that's why I thought goal 2 could possibly fit in with goal 1, because we would be able to monitor that as opposed to waiting until when we get the SBAC results, because by the time we get SBAC results, I'm not sure what month that is, but it's well after school ends in June.
Just a quick question, Madam Chair, for clarification. Are you suggesting that we convert goal 2 into interim goals, or that we combine goals 1 and 2? Or are you just pointing out that if we keep both goals 1 and 2, goal 2 is a leading indicator of goal 1? I'm not sure what the suggestion was.
Well, actually, my suggestion would be that we go with goal 1, not to combine the 2, but that we go with goal 1, because goal 1 and goal 2 are so closely related, that we go with goal 1, that goal 2 becomes an interim goal. That's something we could look at in the interim, because with the SBAC results, we're not getting those until much later. And so using goal 2 as an interim goal would give us iReady data that would be more easily monitored, because we have iReady data available to us throughout the school year. So we'd be able to take a look at that. And it would, I see goal 2 as serving goal 1. Yeah. Mr. Otto, did you have something?
Sorry, no.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, Madam Chair, and again, I would just ask, then how do we get out our students that are 2 or more grade levels below, given that goal 1 is a measurement of all students? So how would we address any disparities in outcomes?
Well, that definitely is not spelled out the way the goal is presented here. And so because it's a board goal, I believe we'd be able to, I mean, if we wanted to go that direction with goal 1, and I don't know what everybody's feeling, but we could certainly, we could certainly, I don't know, add to that. We do have our coach online, and he is available for us. AJ has been a part of our process for 3 years now. We started with AJ in 2020, and maybe he can help us facilitate this process of whittling down these 4 goals to 3 and maybe help us with how goal 1 is presented, and if we should just take a look at the goals for now. Does anybody have any? Yeah. AJ, welcome.
Right.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah.
So the conversation you're having right now, I want to offer some clarity. Right now you have potential goal number 1, potential goal number 2. Both of them are about reading. However, their similarities really diverge from there. And so I think if the board wants to pick a singular goal around literacy, I think you need to decide first which grade levels do you want your goal to be targeting. And then once you've decided that, I think you need to decide, is there any more specificity of population that you want to target? And then after you settle on that, then I think the remaining questions around which assessment and which percentages makes the most sense start to get a lot easier to solve. So I think if you first figure out which grade levels do we want our goal to be focused on, and then secondly, figure out, is there anything else about the population that we want to prescribe? If you could solve those 2 questions first, this gets a lot easier.
Okay.
Just to add to that, as before you go on, we did have a really good discussion in the last session about the difference between these 2 goals. And so I'll just bring that back to us, that one is around really looking at the prevention of a gap forming and thinking about early literacy. So our students who are in the early childhood setting that go into an elementary school at TK or K, we know that our best effort is to prevent a gap from happening. And we are making a huge transition around reading instruction in our district, and that is what Goal 1 represents. If we have students that can read fluently by 3rd grade, that changes the trajectory of their outcomes as a student. The second goal is thinking about where we have seen more struggle for students as they move up into upper grades, and really focusing a lot of attention on the reduction of those that are 2 grade levels behind when we have already aimed to have them become fluent readers. So just want to acknowledge you put some good discussion. We went back and really thought about the precision of that, and they do represent 2 different things. Dr. Benitez, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just really wanted.
Thank you for reminding us of that discussion, Dr. Baker. And so here I'm coming from, if what I'm hearing or if what my colleagues may want to chime in on is collapsing Goal 2 into Goal 1 or removing Goal 2, then I feel that then I have a reservation about only leaving Goal 1. Because in order for us to uphold our value around being equity anchored, then we lose sight of focusing on our highest needs, most underserved students. And if the data tells us that a large percentage of our Black and Latinx and students with disabilities and emerging bilinguals are falling 2 or more years behind at a disproportionate rate than our highest performing students, then I'm not sure if Goal 1 gets at that disparity and or at that equity anchor. So that's my reservation if we're leaning toward, again, either eliminating Goal 2 or collapsing it into Goal 1, that we lose sight of the value around equity and the educational disparities that we currently have data on for our student subgroups.
Madam Chair, if I might, I'd like to reiterate what I recommend you all do right now. I'd stop paying attention to Goal 1 and Goal 2 for a second. And instead, I'd focus on first answering the question, regarding literacy, which grade level do we want to focus on? And then once you've answered that question, then answer the question, are there any other matters about population that we want to address in the goal? And I think if you answer those two, then we can very quickly design which goal that you actually want. But I'm not encouraging you to focus on goal 1 and 2 right now. And focus first on which grade level do we want to focus on for literacy. And then once you all have answered that question, then I'd have the conversation on any other factors around defining the student population. But if you handle it in that order right now, I think you'll get through this pretty quickly.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Yes, thank you, AJ. So there's two parts here that I wanted to just bring up in regards to my stance in regards to our board goals. First off, it's really going back to the ideology of what our roles are as board members. Obviously, we represent the educational system for the entire district. But when we're talking about putting our board goals in place, we are acknowledging some of the shortcomings of the district and trying to put a heightened level of emphasis on improving in those areas, right? And I want to make sure that we understand that that's the purpose and intention of these board goals. When we speak to that piece and we're talking about uplifting some of our biggest shortcomings within the district, areas for growth is what we'll call it. I think that just like in any approach, when you're talking about a workout in the gym or an injury to a part of the body, you have to spend a heightened level of focus and a specificity towards those issues.
Okay. So towards that yeah. Are you going to address a certain grade level?
I am.
Okay.
I am. So when we're talking about specificity, it has been shared with us on numerous accounts that students that can read after grade 3 have a higher trajectory of going on and graduating from high school and going on to four-year universities. So that means that our 4th grade students and higher that don't and have that shortcoming are the ones who need some of the biggest support, because they are those students who have, unfortunately, the biggest shortcoming coming from behind them in regards to potentially graduating from high school. So my stance is that I think that we should spend a heightened level of focus on our 4th grade and above students that we know are underperforming.
Okay.
For me, 3rd grade, because if kids are proficient readers by 3rd grade, we won't have to deal with the students moving on beyond the 3rd grade that are not fluent readers. So for me, if we have students at the reading at the 3rd grade level, when they're in 3rd grade, they're reading at grade level, I think they're going to be fine as they move on other years. So I personally think that we should keep the percentage of 3rd grade students who meet or exceed grade level standards, and that's at goal 1.
Okay. Mr. Otto.
You're making me decide this?
No, you alone will not decide this, but we are asking for your input.
I think that these goals work very well together, but the most important one is goal 1. And the reason for that is because if you establish a solid foundation at that level, then moving on, we can accomplish the other things that we're trying to do here. I won't go on and talk about 3 and 4. I'm just telling you I'm not. But when I looked at board goal number 1, it says the percentage of grade 3 students who meet or exceed grade level standards on the state English language arts. That is the smarter. That's the state board assessment consortium will grow from 48% in June of 2023 to 70% within 5 years by June of 2028. That's what we should shoot for. And I asked and did a little bit of research on how we were going to do that and whether we thought we could achieve that. And the answer was we're going to train all teachers on standards, quality core instruction and subgroups. And as a result of that, we'll have the solid foundation. So my preference is to get a solid foundation and not concentrate on 4 through 8.
Okay. For me, I think the grade level we should focus on is grade 3, but it doesn't address the gap that we have. And so for me, a perfect goal 1 would also address the gap. And so I don't know if we can add something to the language of goal 1 to address the gap, as we have added, because we improved a couple of the other goals from our last time. But I know, well, actually, I'd have to go through the paperwork to see what the gap is at the 3rd grade level between our subgroups. But if we could include or address that gap at the grade 3 level, I would be in favor of that one. As far as literacy is concerned, I think it's more important to have a good foundation, and then you eliminate or work to eliminate any future problems in grades 4 through 8. So, Dr. Benitez and Mr. Miller, if we could add language to goal 1 as far as addressing a gap, so not collapsing or combining 2 goals, because I don't want to do that, but if we could address the gap in goal 1, would that be more favorable?
Well, I'm sorry to cut you off. I just don't see how we do that if we're talking about 3rd graders. I mean, measuring the reading proficiency of kindergartners? I guess I don't see that. That's where I would need some help from the admin team on how we would be able to do so.
Okay, I'm going to ask senior staff if you could.
Let me call AJ back in. I think it's a good opportunity for him to talk about the specificity and interim goals that are related to the goal itself and how that may address some of what you're talking about.
So in this process, the board dictates based on its understanding of the community's vision and of the current reality for students. The board dictates what the goals for the institution will be. In response to the board designing the goals, then the superintendent comes back and says, here are the interim goals. Here are the measures of progress that we will use as administration to identify during the school year whether or not we're making progress. You don't want to wait till the end of the year and figure out, okay, well, how do we do? You really want to know along the way. And so for this particular conversation, I largely recommend that everyone just forget that interim goals exist. What you want to focus on is what is the single most important thing that we need to be addressing as a school system, and dial in on that. And whether that, right now it sounds like there's potentially an emerging consensus around 3rd grade, then what that leaves for discussion is there any more specificity around the population? Do you want to look at 3rd graders from a particular student group? Do you want to look at 3rd graders who are at a particular level of proficiency? Eric, to answer your question, I would be somewhat surprised if your administration doesn't have a way of determining where 1st and 2nd graders are in their English language proficiency. It certainly wouldn't be with SBAC because it's not going to be administered, the 1st and 2nd graders, but they certainly have other tools that would help them have a sense of which students are where. So if that's a concern you have, your staff can illuminate you on how they go about that. But what's important for you to know is that I'd be surprised if they can't, in fact, give you a sense of, okay, this student is this ready in their literacy skills, this student is this ready in their literacy skills. And so if that's of interest to you, your staff could find some way to inform the board about what percentage of our students are on grade level on 1 year behind or 2 years behind, they could probably come up with some way of approximating that for your first and second graders. How much lower they can go depends on which assessments they're using, but I think it'll get harder the earlier grade level they get. But for first and second grade, they could probably approximate that. Madam Chair, to your question, yes, it is possible if you all wanted to modify goal number 1 to not only be focused on third grade, but to be focused on a specific group of third graders, then you can make that, you all could choose to make that modification. And again, whether that's specificity by student group or by student proficiency level or both, that is what I think the 5 of you need to sort through right now. Once you are done, it is accurate that the superintendent will go back and put together some interim goals to measure progress along the way. But I recommend that you leave that out of your conversation right now, because that's not a decision the board will make. The board won't be picking the interim goals, the superintendent will. Just like the superintendent won't be picking the goal, the board will. And so I'd set that aside for right now, but do know that whatever you pick, she's going to work with her team to identify what are measures that are predictive of the goal throughout the year. And that's data that you will be looking at regularly. So we're not at the end of this conversation. It's just important that you focus on your piece first.
Okay, Dr. Benitez.
So, Madam Chair, if our data clearly demonstrates that the students that are most likely to be 2 or more years behind, below grade level, are our English learners, our Black students, our Latinx students, our students with disabilities, then I don't see how we get to eliminate our educational inequities if we have a goal that measures progress and growth for all students. So data that we've had presented to us, that's been shared, that's been discussed for grades 4 through 8, reflect that something is not happening in third grade around literacy that is disproportionately negatively impacting our Black students, our Latinx students, our emerging bilinguals, our students with disabilities. So unless we call out the populations that we would like to see the strongest acceleration, the most growth from, then I don't know how we reconcile the inequity, educational inequity.
And I hear you, and I appreciate that. And I'm trying to figure out a way how it makes sense, because I really truly believe that third grade is more foundational, but I don't like the fact that it doesn't address the groups of students that need the help the most. And so that's why I'm not fully sold on goal 1. However, I do like the grade 3 part. And in my way of thinking, if this is a goal for the next 5 years, I'd like us to focus on something that addresses the younger students. And I feel like maybe by the time it's, grades 4 and 8, we've missed an opportunity to help them out in the third grade. I'd like to prevent them from getting behind, which is why I'd like goal 1 to address the the populations that we are trying to serve. And so I don't know if any of us have any ideas on how we can.
President Craighead, I'm going to have Mr. Moskowitz.
Yes, Mr.
has something
If I
to
may,
share.
just listening to the conversation. So based on the conversation over the last couple of meetings, we helped generate these draft goals, and we separated out grade 3 for goal 1 and grades 4 through 8 for goal 2. But there's no reason why we couldn't change the grade span for the data around iReady. So if there was a feeling that what was more important was the tracking those students below 2 or more years below, we could shift that to grades 2 through 4, 2 through 5, 2 through 8, that we can use iReady in any grade span. We administer iReady in grades 1 through 8. So if iReady and looking at students 2 or more years below grade level is what is important, then you can determine, as Mr. Crabwell said, you can determine what grade span are you looking for and apply that metric of iReady to that grade span.
Okay. That sounds good to me. I know, Mr. Miller, Dr. Benitez, you were more leaning towards that goal 2. Would you be favorable to that amendment, that instead of grades 4 through 8, it would be grades 2 through 4?
So using Mr. Moskowitz's logic, why can't we do and? Why can't we do both? 3rd grade and grades 4 through 8.
You mean just do grades 3 through 8?
So we do, SBAC at grade 3 and acceleration 4 through 8 because, and we talked about it, right? 3rd grade isn't the end of the story for students. Right. So again, we also want to be aspirational here, that just because, like, what about all those students during the pandemic that are 2 or more grade levels behind? They can't go back to 3rd grade, right? What do we do for a student that started the 3rd grade remote and is now moving into 6th grade middle school that's already 2 or more grade levels behind?
So what I hear you, maybe Dr. Benitez, is advocating for is that we have both goal 1 and goal 2, right? So we're deciding between 1 or 2, but 1 and 2 could be an option because they do measure different grade spans with different metrics.
Right.
Mr. Otto?
Sure. And I think it's important to know that what happens, the way you learn reading in 1 and 2 is vastly different than what you're doing in 3rd grade. It's you're really learning it mostly by looking at it early on, and then later when you're in 3rd grade, it becomes much more dependent on what it is that you've learned already. I think there is a way to combine these, to call it out so that we're getting the data and we're measuring how we're doing by using language that takes into consideration that you need to have a strong foundation, and the way you get a strong foundation is to look at the percentage of grade 3 students and make sure you're going to increase that, the ones that are successful. But then you take another look at that in subsequent grades to make sure that the groups, the different groups are being taken into consideration, because those are the ones that are most at risk.
Ms. Lopez.
Mr. Otto, so you're suggesting that we combine goal 1 and goal 2 somehow?
Somehow, yes.
Got it.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. It's the SBAC and iReady measure 2 different things, and AJ just shared. If the superintendent's going to be the one developing the interim goals, how is she going to incorporate iReady into an SBAC outcome?
Could we possibly switch the iReady to SBAC on 4th through 8th grade?
But we're trying to measure acceleration and growth here over the course of time, so that we could see 4th graders getting to grade level potentially by grade 6, 7, or 8.
And why couldn't we do both, Mr. Benitez?
I'm saying we're saying the same thing. I want to do both. I want to do 3rd grade literacy and learning acceleration.
Right, but you said we couldn't combine 1 and 2?
Well, best practices, Mr. Crable, is that we don't have 2 different assessments for one goal, if I read your book correctly.
That is accurate.
Okay, but is there a way we can work in 3rd grade and not use a separate assessment?
Our fourth, fifth, and sixth graders are the ones that are 2 or more grade levels behind. If you're in the second grade, you are not yet 2 grade levels behind at that point.
It is absolutely possible to be 2 grade levels behind your expected proficiency in the second grade.
Yes, sir.
AJ, can we, I got a feeling that this answer is already no, but I'm going to ask anyway. If goal number 2 said with the goal of 70% of our students reading at a proficient level, the district will look at grades 4 through 8 who are students. I think you get where I'm going here. So we could state in the beginning that the district's initial goal is to get at 70%, and that SBAC data would be the indicator on who the students are that we would focus on through grades 4 through 8. Is that possible? Am I breaking the rules here? I'm assuming you're going to tell me yes.
You can absolutely word the goal the way that you describe as a way of signaling to the community what your long-term vision is.
Okay.
That, as a practical matter, you need to be clear that that does not change the nature of the goal. That is simply signaling language. So if we said, in pursuit of 80% of our third graders reading on grade level, we expect to see the percentage of them who are 2 grade levels below coming into the third grade.
Coming into the fourth grade.
Who get on grade level will increase from X% to Y%. So yes, you can have that in there as signaling language. There's nothing wrong with that. I just want to be clear, that's not the actual goal. The actual goal is what comes at the end that indicates where are we at right now and where are we trying to get to.
Got it.
I just want to clarify, colleagues, because if I need to get put in check, put me in check. A second grader can be more than 2 grade levels behind, can be 3 grade levels behind, 4, because I keep saying, I'm using our wording here, 2 or more grade levels behind. Mm-hmm. Can a second grader be 3 or 4 or 5 grade levels behind?
There is. Kindergarten be developmentally behind expectation by 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, but we're using, I want to anchor it, we're using iReady here. I'm not talking in the abstract.
So the category is 2 or more years below. A second grader could be 2 years below.
But not 4 years below, right, Mr. Moskowitz?
But there's no category of 4
exactly.
years below.
But we did have 3. We do have data on 3 grade levels below.
Correct.
How can a second grader using iReady be 3 grade levels below if we don't use iReady?
They would fall into the category of 2.
Yes.
So and the goal is 2 or more. So they
Correct.
would still indicate 2
Right.
years below.
Right. So I want to go back to the pragmatic component of it. So, colleagues, with the larger intentions of Goal 1 to have 70% of our students by the third grade, 70% of our students reading at proficiency. If we use that as, I'm going to call it a preface statement for for goal number 2, and I think that we accomplish what we're trying to reach here in regards to stating that and now once again, I don't know how we'll wordsmith this, but the SBAC being the indicator of our students who should be reading at grade level by the end of the third grade. And once we've identified who those students are, then now we'll be spending a heightened focus on those students that are now in the fourth grade. And we'll be working with them through the 8th grade to get them from 34% to 20%, or reducing that number.
I'm going to defer to AJ on that one. Is that possible?
Ask it again.
How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? No, I'm kidding. No. So, and I keep using the term a preface statement. And the preface statement would be with the district's goal of having 70% of its third graders reading at proficiency by the end of the third grade, according to the SBAC. And then goal number 2 would kick in.
Aren't those 2 separate goals?
No, what I'm saying is, and I want to be very clear, I'm stating that the district has the larger goal of 70% of its student reading. That's going to be the undertone of what our goal is. But we know that this is a goal that is hard for us to reach, and those students that have fallen short are going to have a heightened level of focus in goal number 2. At least that's what I'm trying to do. I don't know if I'm wording it right. That's where I need you guys' help here.
So are you suggesting keeping goal 1 and 2? I guess that would be my question.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So
can I ask AJ a question? Is there something in the Constitution, or at least in your book, that says you can't have more than 3 goals?
No. What we recommend is that you have
no further questions.
No fewer than 1, no more than 5. Our recommendation is 3 or fewer. Fewer goals give you more ability to focus your resources and accomplish larger improvement. More goals give you less ability to focus your resources. It just means that you need to target a smaller quantity of improvement, that's all. So, for example, I'm thinking of one district, they literally adopted 1 goal. And their 1 goal was to go from, I think at the time it was like 20% or something like that, to 90%. And they only adopted 1 goal, and that's a huge leap, but they were able to accomplish the 1 goal specifically because they had just 1 goal and all resources were bent toward that 1 vision. There are other districts that, if you want really big leaps, would have to have fewer goals. But if you're comfortable with smaller leaps, then you can have more goals. But that's the thing that you just want to be mindful of, is you live in a fixed, in a constrained resource environment. And so more goals means smaller growth as you'd expect. Fewer goals means more. So if you want to keep 4, I would say you just have to be mindful that you should expect less growth for each of those 4. If you want to go down to 3 or 2 or 1, I'd say you should be able to expect more growth out of that. So that is the decision that the board's making when it is choosing between 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5.
That what it says is that it can be between 3 and 5, and according to my math, 4 is between 3 and 5. Yeah.
It could be between 1 and 5. That's correct.
Right. So we don't run into any other problem if we kept these 2 and then moved on to the next one, because I don't see a way of combining them, because they really represent 2 separate ideas, and they're both good ideas, and I think that I'm not worried about us having 2 goals here, or even a total of 4, and we don't know if we're going to even wind up with 4. I just think we need to keep these 2. Because reading's so foundational. Yeah.
So the thing that I encouraged you all to do was first decide which grades you wanted to focus on.
Right.
And so we came into this evening, you had 2 different grade spans that you wanted to focus on, one focusing on 3rd, another focusing on 4th through 8th. Then I heard an emerging consensus of focusing on 3rd, and now I hear absolutely no consensus whatsoever. It sounds like you all are not clear if you want to have 1 goal around literacy, multiple goals. And so I'd still recommend the same thing. Get clear about that. Let that drive the decision. I wouldn't be focused on anything else right now. I'd first make that decision. Do we want to focus just on 3rd grade? Yes or no? Do we want to, if no, do we also then want to have an additional focus on 4th through 8th? Once you got that solved, then I answer the question of, is there any specificity about student population, whether by student group or by proficiency characteristics? But I'd still recommend that you all solve this question first. Are you going to focus in on just 3rd grade, focus in on just 4th through 8th, or have separate goals to focus on both? If you answer that question first, I think this will speed things up.
Yeah. Well, if we agreed that we wanted to keep them both, meaning 1 and 2, you're saying that would be acceptable?
Absolutely.
Did you say absolutely?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's not really the decision point that you want to be focused on. The decision point you want to be focused on is, do we want to look at both? And the real trade-off that you make is if we keep 2 goals, if we keep 4 goals, then we should expect a little less progress. If we want to see more dramatic progress, then we should have fewer goals. That's what you should really be keeping in mind when you're deciding, do we want to keep 1 goal versus 2 goals? It's really a matter of, do we want to see 2 goals with more moderate growth or 1 goal with more aggressive growth?
I tried to drill down a little bit on how to accomplish each of these goals, and there seem to be ways to do that. And so maybe I'm Pollyanna about this, but it seems to me that you could have reasonable, acceptable growth on both goals if you adopted them and you did what, for example, on goal 1 was to train all teachers. Now we're only doing some on standards, quality, core instruction, and the subgroups. And then on goal 2, let me turn my page here. All teachers would have to be taught what I've now learned, the better language is structured literacy with this high percentage, and that we would be accomplishing both goals, which are without breaking it in half, without separating it. Does that make sense?
Madam Chair, if I may, just to be blunt, this doesn't seem like we're getting very far very quickly. Can we take a slightly different approach? Can we just go around the dais right quick and figure out, is it the preference of board members to have 1 goal to focus on 3rd grade, to focus on 4th and 8th grade, or to focus on both? Can we go around the dais and see if a clarity emerges of which of those 3 options is preferable?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Miller.
To confirm, my interest is to focus on those students who are not proficient after the end of the 3rd grade, so 4th grade, yes.
Okay. Dr. Benitez?
Both.
Ms. Lopez?
Goal 1 and 2, both.
So, okay. All right. Mr. Otto?
Both.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
For the sake of argument, I'd be open to both.
Then I would recommend we close the conversation on that, and now we move on to, if you're going to keep both of them, is there any particular changes you would make to the language that currently exists? Or are you comfortable with the language that exists for 1 and 2 right now?
The only change I would make to goal 1 is to add a provision that we close a gap, but then that becomes 2 separate goals. No?
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would make it 3
So,
goals.
so the way goal 1 is on its own, I don't think we can change it in a way that would incorporate or address our the students that we are truly trying to serve, and that's not going to help close any gaps in literacy. So that's my problem with goal number 1. So you're saying we need to talk about goal number 3?
So what I'm asking, it sounds like there is a consensus among the board to retain both goal 1 and 2. Before going on to goal 3, my inquiry was, are there any other modifications that someone would recommend regarding goals 1 and 2? Or are the board members comfortable with with the assumption that you're going to keep 1 and 2? Are board members comfortable with the way they are currently worded? Or let me ask it differently. Does someone have a specific recommended language change? If so, please present it. If not, let's move on.
I don't think anybody has a specific change, no.
Okay, so the only specific language change I would recommend is I would recommend switching goal 2 from iReady to SBAC, with the understanding that the way that your administration is going to have to monitor that is almost certainly iReady. I don't know what else you all have that would work better than iReady to monitor performance regarding goal number 2. But I'd encourage you to consider having both goal 1 and 2 be based on SBAC, recognizing that for both goals 1 and 2, almost certainly the interim goals are going to wind up being iReady.
Is SBAC 1 time a year?
Yeah.
Test? Whereas iReady is 3 times a year.
That is correct. The way that this normally works is that the board adopts a goal that is based on a summative metric, and then the administration adopts interim goals that are based on interim metrics.
Mr. Miller?
Help me understand why there would be an issue with using iReady as the measurement or the metric. I think that technically, if we use that as the larger goal, and yes, the students will be taking, they'll be doing the iReady assessment 3 times a year, but I don't see why there would be an issue with keeping iReady as the assessment tool as currently written.
I don't think you do iReady prior to 3rd grade, do you?
Yes, you do it starting first.
Starting first? Okay.
To answer your question, from a technical perspective, is there a problem with having iReady as your goal? No. There's a practical limitation that creates, is that when you are monitoring progress in any particular area, you want to have multiple instruments that you can bring to bear to evaluate, are we actually seeing improvement? You don't want to become over-reliant on any one metric. If you could have 2 or 3 different metrics all pointing the way, that gives you more assurance, are we growing or not? And so by having a situation where you really then might only be relying on one assessment at iReady, you just have less confidence in the data than you would have if you had multiple measures all pointing in the same direction. And so to answer your question, yes, you're correct. There's nothing technically imperfect with retaining iReady. I would just encourage you as a board, it will give you more confidence in your data to have multiple measures, not just one. If you pick SBAC as a summative, then in addition to having SBAC, you'll also almost certainly wind up with iReady. If you pick iReady as a summative, then you can do that, but then you'll also be working with iReady as both the summative and the interim, which just provides less confidence. That is not a deal breaker. That's just why I recommend that you consider having different assessments as part of your progress monitoring regime.
Got it.
So they stand the way they are? We use the
Well,
language.
he's recommending that we change iReady assessments in goal 2 to SBAC.
But that would give us the same assessment. I'm sorry, AJ, you lost me. You're saying it's better to have multiple different assessments, but if we're using the same assessment for goal 2 and for goal 1, then that's
one assessment.
One assessment. If we're using SBAC for goal 1, by your explanation, then we will use a different assessment for goal 2 to give us a broader breadth of assessments.
That's correct. You're thinking about these as a portfolio of goals, which you need to be thinking about these as individual goals that will be monitored independent of each other. And so goal number 1 will be monitored independently from goal number 2. When you monitor goal number 1, either you will have one assessment that you are looking at, or you will have multiple assessments. Right now, because you have SBAC as your summative goal for the summative assessment for the goal, then that opens the way for there to also be interim assessments that you're using to monitor this goal as well. When it comes time to monitor goal number 2, right now, by having iReady as the summative assessment for the goal, then you are setting yourself up that there really only be one assessment that is going to be aligned to that, and that's going to be iReady itself. And so you wind up being limited in what the data can tell you. And so, again, it is not required that you change it away. This is a recommendation, not something that is breaching protocol of some nature. I'm just suggesting to you, if you want to have more assurance, then you want to have multiple assessments for each goal. The way to do that is to pick a different summative from what is likely to be the interim. SBAC gives that to you. iReady does not.
So can our senior staff help us out here in terms of what we would, can you quantify what we would be losing or gaining with these approaches?
Yeah, appreciate the conversation. And Dr. Lund, feel free to jump in. We were just kind of dialoguing about some options. One, and Mr. Crabell, maybe you can weigh in on this. So iReady is given 3 times a year. Right. If we were to word this, the percentage of students who are 2 or more grade levels below on diagnostic 3, meaning the June or the end of year administration, could we use diagnostic 1 and 2 as an interim measure towards diagnostic 3? So
you're already going to have to do that. That's what I'm assuming, is that that's exactly what you're having to do, which means all 3 sets of data that you're presenting to the board are all iReady, rather than as with goal 1, part of the data that you'll present to the board will be SBAC, and part of the data you present to the board will be iReady. When they have 2 entirely different assessments, that will give them more confidence. If both of those assessments are pointing in the same direction, that provides more confidence than if just one assessment is pointing in one direction.
And how do we, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Well, and the other, Dr. Lund's other possible suggestion we were discussing is to, if you were to use SBAC on goal 2, you could actually talk about the percent of students who are not meeting. So there are 4 categories of proficiency on SBAC. Exceeded, met, nearly met, and not met. But you could actually say the percent of students that are not meeting will decrease from X to Y. And that would then allow us still to measure students who are well below grade level, and that we could use then iReady as the progress towards that.
So I understand that. In my mind, and I'm open to whatever my colleagues want to land on, but in my mind, there's a difference between measuring proficiency and growth or acceleration. Would we still be able to get to the growth and or acceleration using SBAC?
I guess I would just note that the way that this goal is written, it's actually written as an achievement goal. It's not written as a growth goal. So
that's the same point I was about to make, is that you have essentially 2 goals about proficiency and 1 goal about gap closure. The 3 different goal types are proficiency, growth, and gap closure. You are, in the first one, goal number 1, you are clearly measuring what percentage of students exceed this particular threshold of proficiency. In goal number 2, you're actually saying what percentage of students are no longer beneath this particular threshold of proficiency. And then in goal number 3, you're saying the gap between this student group and this student group will close. So you actually have 2 proficiency goals and 1 comparison goal. If you wanted a growth goal, what that normally sounds like is the percentage of students who grew by 1.5 grade levels this year will increase from 10% of our students grew by 1.5 grade levels to 40% of our students grew by 1.5 grade levels. Or what's more common, if we were using the language that you have there, of the students who are 2 or more grade levels, who are 2 or more grade levels below on whatever the assessment is, of the universe of students who are 2 or more grade levels below, the percentage of that group of students who will experience at least 1.25 year growth, or the percentage of that group of students who will experience at least 1.5 years growth, will grow from 10% of them experiencing 1.5 years growth to 50% of them experiencing 1.5 years growth. That would be a growth goal rather than proficiency. Does that distinction make sense?
Yes, AJ, and that's the way we had the goal originally written before we revised it to this.
If it helps also, your 2 achievement goals are actually focusing on different groups of students. So you can still have 2 achievement goals because of the focus, the way it's currently written. And if it helps you to think about it, that first goal is really our current TK students. That second goal is really our current K-3 students that by 2028 will be 4 through 8.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
So where we stand is sounds like there's an emergent consensus among the board to retain goals 1 and 2. I encourage the board to consider SMAC as a summative assessment for goal 2. I'm hearing no consensus around that recommendation. And then a question was asked, is goal 2 a proficiency goal or a growth goal? And I described it as very clearly a proficiency goal and offered what the language would need to be if you wanted to change it to a growth goal. And so if that is where the board is, it sounds like you want to keep goals 1 and 2, and you generally want to keep them the way they're written. But it sounds like now the one thing to test is the pleasure of the board to have number 2 be a goal about proficiency. What percentage of students make it across this particular standard? Or do you want to make it about growth? What percentage of students show this much growth? Regardless of where they start, did they show at least this much growth during the year? So is it and so I'd love to just go down the row again for the sake of efficiency. Is it the pleasure of the board for this to be, or was the intention for this to be a goal about proficiency, number 2? Or was the intention for this to be a goal about growth? Would each of you mind just sharing, and then we can making the adjustment based on what you all say will be fairly straightforward.
Okay, who wants to start? Mr. Miller?
And we're talking about in reference to goal number 2, correct?
And number 2, that's correct, sir.
All right, for me, my interest has been and has been consistent about wanting to see growth or improvement.
Dr. Benitez?
I have a question, Dr. Baker. So if I'm understanding correctly, common assessments are given multiple times a year. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So we can, yes, but we can deduce from those common assessments, if we're still looking at end of year goals, we can deduce growth and or acceleration through those common assessments?
I mean, they would more measure overall proficiency than growth. And we continue to measure the correlation between our common assessments and iReady, but they do approximate in a lot of ways what we're trying to achieve by the end of the year.
Could you look at diagnostic 1 and 2 en route to diagnostic 3?
That's the question.
You could.
But that would be up to you in the interim goal if that's the way you wanted to think through this data.
Well, I think what AJ's talking about is rewriting this goal depending on the pleasure of the board being growth or proficiency, and then we would form our interim goals around that.
What'd you say?
The one other thing, and I appreciate you asking your staff about this, but the one other thing I would reiterate is the board should feel under no compulsion whatsoever to try to craft goals that conveniently match the data the administration has. You all are setting the vision as relayed to you by the community. Your job is to set that vision, and then the administration, if they have to adapt or modify, then it is their responsibility. But the administration should be adapting to the community's vision, not the community's vision being adapted to the administration. And so I definitely appreciate, and it's great boardsmanship to try to be cognizant of what data is available currently. But I would just suggest to you that it's definitely not the intention of this activity. And if, as a result of where the board lands, the administration has to go deploy new practices, then such is the nature of this work.
So I then, thank you, AJ. You give me props and then you slap me down. I like that style. I prefer acceleration in the context of we have been receiving such consistent good data on acceleration on an ongoing basis. So my preference would be to measure acceleration.
Mr. Otto?
Well, is it helpful to restate what we learned from the community about what it is that they want? I think what they want is all students to be as smart as they possibly can be and do as well as they can be on these tests. And we also want, and that's why we have two goals here, to make sure that those who have been not as successful so far become more successful as part of the goal. Is that a fair statement of what we learned from the community?
I believe so. So on goal 2, do you think it should be more about proficiency or growth?
Proficiency, I think.
Okay, Ms. Lopez?
Proficiency, and I think we should use the SBAC as an assessment indicator.
I'm leaning towards growth, and I wouldn't mind using the SBAC, knowing that other assessments will be used in the interim.
So what I'm hearing is a slight, not a strong consensus, but a slight preference on the part of the board toward a goal about growth. And we can certainly develop that for you. That's not problematic at all. It just would require the staff and I to do a little bit of homework and bring that back to you. You also mentioned that in addition to wanting to see something about growth, that you feel comfortable with using SBAC. I heard 2 of you describe that, but I did not hear anyone else mention that. And so the direction I would say that the board seems to be leaning right now is to have to keep number 1 as it's currently written, and then to modify number 2 as it's currently written to be focused on growth rather than proficiency, but no other substantive changes. One other thing that I would clarify for you is, unless, think of there as being, this is a hypersimplification. Think of there as being 4 different types of assessment: diagnostic, formative, interim, and summative. Goals should be based on summative assessment. Interim goals should generally be based on interim assessment. I would, as a general rule, encourage you away from setting interim metrics on formative or diagnostic assessment data, only because by design, those are not psychometrically aligned to your summative the way interims give you more of a tendency toward. Those are just assessments that are designed for an entirely different purpose, and are probably, even if you have a really strong common formatives program, which most districts don't, so you would be unusual in that regard. But even if that was the case, just psychometrically, diagnostic and formative assessment is by design not interchangeable with interim assessment. And so just you should expect that what the administration comes back with is probably going to be limited to whatever interim assessment data that you have available. And the more reliable that data is, the more common it is, more standardized it is, the easier it will be for you all as a board to be able to have confidence in what that data is telling you. That being said, that is my synopsis of what I've heard so far. If, Madam Chair, if that sounds like my summary, that the board wants to keep goal 1 as written and keep goal 2 as written, though modifying it to be about growth with the proficiency. If that is your understanding as well, then I recommend we move on to goals 3 and 4.
And proficiency, when I said proficiency, it was a horse race with growth. I barely could distinguish which one that I preferred, so I'm happy to go with growth.
That makes it even a stronger consensus to proceed.
Okay. Along those lines, how about using SBAC instead of iReady? Do we have any other?
So I heard you and one of your colleagues suggest
Right.
a comfort with that.
Yeah. Anybody else would be comfortable with that? Dr. Benitez has his thumb up. He'd be comfortable with that. Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I mean, it'll work. I mean, I think that the iReady interim data will be helpful as well, so, and knowing that that's going to be the tool in letting us know where we are with our students, I'm comfortable.
Okay. And Mr. Otto?
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, looks like.
Excellent. Then
Yeah.
we will make those adjustments per the wishes of the board. Then, unless there's something else, Madam Chair, goal number 3. And the question that I would ask board members is, do you want to keep number 3 as it's currently written? Do you want to delete it as it's currently written? Or do you want to modify it? And if you want to modify it, what is the specific language of the modification that you would offer? So do you want to keep it, delete it, or modify it?
I like to get the stats on on long-term English learners that meet the algebra A through G requirement by the end of 9th grade.
Well, that's separate from the goal, so we can.
It is, but we're looking at subgroups that are really trailing behind. So I like just to see how our long-term English learners are faring.
And that would be a separate conversation because we're talking about goals, so.
No, it's evidence on the basis of which you would make a decision.
I think what she's asking is, she's curious about are there other student groups that should be named in the goal? But rather than making that assertion, it sounds like she wants to know if the data supports the assertion.
That's correct.
Madam Superintendent, is that something that you and your team is knowable in the next 15 minutes?
No, that's not. That's something we would have to put a report together.
Any other information that we feel that we absolutely need before voting on this besides that kind of information?
So if I recall, this is what we asked our superintendent to do homework on, to look at which of our subgroups would, what the data suggests are the most underserved or present the highest need. My presumption is that that's why we ended up centering Black students with this goal, because we asked that of our superintendent and staff at our last meeting. Let us know which of the subgroups are most illustrative to have the biggest impact scaled wise. So can you verify whether that took place, Dr. Baker?
I can't do the citation of the data, but what you've described is what we did. Yeah. It gets into, and we can definitely put a report together about LTEL students at that stage of their development. It gets super granular really quickly as we talk about the categories of English learners, but it's something that we could bring back. Mm-hmm.
Board members, keep, delete, modify. What say you on goal number 3?
I say keep. I say keep.
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 I want to keep it. I would like to know how our long-term English learners are faring, just to see if that's another subgroup we could potentially add to goal number 3.
Keep.
Is that a report that the administration would be able to produce by the next board meeting?
Yes.
All right, so it sounds like for the time being, there's a full consensus of the board to keep the language of number 3 with the understanding that you'll be receiving more data. So if your decision-making changes in the future to reflect that, so be it. That takes us to number 4, and I would ask the same question. Keep, delete, or modify?
I'll lead it off. Keep.
Keep.
Modify?
Modify.
Keep.
What are the, what's the specific language of the modifications? Who wants to go first?
Do you want to go, Ms. Lopez, or? So I'd like to keep the proficiency gap going from 13 to 0. My question about potentially modifying would be if Dr. Baker and our executive team could provide the context for why we're using 66%. Does getting to 66% get us to the 0%, or just sort of an explanation of more than 66% of black students?
We are currently, all of our subgroups are currently below 66%. So it would indicate an increase for all. If our black African American students were at 66% and the gap was 0, that would mean that all students were at 66%. And that is above where they all are, each of our current subgroups are at right now.
I just wanted to confirm that, Mr. Moskowitz.
And therefore,
Slide 5 in your packet actually illustrates it in case you want to look back at it.
For me, I love that we're focusing on high-need students, and so I just like to get that other data to see if there's maybe another subgroup that we need to include here.
And am I understanding you to say that essentially the same question you have for goal 3, you have for goal 4?
That's correct.
Madam Soup, is that analysis also achievable by the next board meeting?
Yes.
All right, so what I'm hearing sounds like, again, a consensus of the board to proceed with goal 4 with the understanding that additional data may be forthcoming that could cause the board to alter in its direction. Unless there's an opposition to it, I'd like to proceed to having the same conversation about the guardrails. Madam Chair, is that acceptable, or do we need to continue with, or do we need to stay on the goals?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'd like to have the same conversation for guardrails very quickly. Is that acceptable, or do we need to continue having a conversation about goals?
Yes, let's have the same conversation for guardrails.
Then there are 3 guardrail candidates. The first one is the superintendent may not allow resources to be allocated without evidence of their equitable distribution aligned with the Excellence and Equity Board policy. My inquiry to the board members: keep it, delete it, or modify it?
Keep.
Keep.
Mr. Otto?
keep.
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 Potential guardrail candidate number 2, the superintendent may not allow major district-wide initiatives to go forth without engaging students of color and their families following stakeholder engagement principles that are utilizing current adopted best practices. Keep, delete, or modify?
Keep.
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 And that brings us to guardrail candidate number 3. The superintendent may not allow implementation or adoption of any classroom curricula programming that does not prioritize educational and racial equity. Keep, delete, or modify.
Absolutely keep.
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 That was 5 keeps on the last one.
Then the next step, Madam Superintendent, actually becomes yours. There is a slight modification to goal number 2 that your team needs to make. I'm happy to work with you all on that. But then the next step is to then come back to the board with potential interims. What I would encourage you as a staff to expect is that you have your 4 goals and your 3 guardrails, that you should reasonably expect that this is going to be the charge that the board gives you. Their understanding of the community's high priority vision is these 4 goals. The board's understanding of the community's high priority values are these 3 guardrails. And I would encourage you to begin planning and developing your work plans appropriately around that. For the sake of the board, though, in advance of making your final vote to adopt these, I'd recommend that you do so once you have an indication from your superintendent of what are the interim goals she will be using to monitor progress toward these, which, based on the conversations we have, I suspect will actually give you a fair amount of comfort. Now, it is not unusual for the development of interim goals if the administration hasn't already got a head start. It's not unusual for this to be a 4 to 6 week process because there's some real thoughtfulness that needs to go into the development of those and to ascertain the extent to which they're predictive of their respective goals and guardrails. Madam Superintendent, do you have some insight into how long it will take you to develop the interims? Are you all already pretty far down the road, or are you all going to need to get started almost from scratch based on what you've heard tonight?
Yeah, we can commit to the 4-week window, not the 6-week window. We have begun to draft interim goals, and with tonight's discussion, it will help us to finalize and bring back to the board.
Then, Madam Chair, what I would recommend is that you add to the board's agenda for adoption, for consideration, not adoption, but because you may not adopt them at anything. In fact, it's most commonly that you won't. But I would add to the agenda for the board's consideration the approval of its goals and guardrails at a meeting that occurs no fewer than 30 days from today. What is most normal, so board members, you need to understand this. I'm telling you what is most normal is that you will receive the interim goals and the interim guardrails, and it will cause you to rethink your goals and your guardrails. That is the most normal thing. So what I encourage you to do is to make sure that you've had time to visit with your superintendent before that meeting so that any major questions that you have, you can convey to her before that meeting. Doing so increases the likelihood that you're able to not only consider them, but actually vote to approve them a month from now. But if you come into that meeting cold, almost certainly you're going to need to make some adjustments that will push back your date of adoption. What questions, board or staff, do you have about next steps?
Do we have any questions, colleagues, about next steps? I believe we're clear on the next steps. No fewer than 30 days, and we may or may not, depending on if we want to be normal, change our minds once we see those interim goals.
That is the most normal thing that happens, and that's perfectly normal, reasonable, acceptable part of the process. But what I do find is the more that you've had, and you as individual board members have sat down with your superintendent and had a conversation about the interims before that meeting, the greater the likelihood that you'll be able to surface any concerns and that you'll be able to proceed with a vote a month from now. And so I'd certainly encourage you to do so. What I'll also say is that I will make myself available to your staff so that any questions or concerns they have as they are developing these that I'm available to support them with, though in all candor, your staff is better than most staffs.
Thank you for that, and I do believe we agree wholeheartedly on that one. So thank
I'd
you
like to
very much.
modify that. Oh,
You'd
sorry.
like to modify that? That's not what we're voting on. Thank you for all your assistance. I know it's been a long process, but we want to get it right. And
Amen.
that's the bottom line, is that we do right by our kids, and that's why we embarked on this journey. And so we appreciate all your help and guidance and getting us to where we need to be. So thank you very much. Dr.
Honored to
Baker?
be of service, Madam Chair. You all have a blessed evening.
Thank you, AJ. President Cricket, I'd like to suggest a 5-minute recess before we proceed with the agenda.
Okay, let's do that. Let's return at 7:35. That gives us a little leeway on that 5 minutes, but everybody back in their seats at 7:35. Thank you. A short break because we had a long discussion. So there was some confusion earlier about public comment, and so we're going to accommodate a couple of speakers at this time. A little bit unusual. We're moving the agenda around. So I'm going to ask Ms. Hernandez and help me with the pronunciation of your name. Thank you.
Norley, thank you so much. Thank you. Well, hello, members of the board. My name is Norley, and I have 2 kids that attend Muir Academy. Unfortunately, out of concern for my children's safety, they are no longer attending Muir until the ongoing issue that is present is resolved and addressed, formally addressed, and dealt with. I not only speak for myself, but for other parents as well. We are all very concerned about our children's safety, and we feel like we're not being heard with the school. A female student was sexually assaulted on campus during school hours on May 20, 2023 of this year by a male student. We were never aware of the situation. We never got any notification. We actually just found out a couple days ago, and it's not okay that there's no transparency with the school. They're not acknowledging us parents, and it's not okay. It's not okay. The male student is still on campus. He's still allowed to be on campus. How is that possible? I ask you guys. He is a known problem child. He has a long history of causing problems to all children. He is known to be a problem by teachers and staff. In fact, the staff has a text chain for this particular individual. When he is gone for more than 5 minutes, this shows how they are concerned for our children's safety rather than the principal. Sadly, our children are also afraid of this individual and repercussions that they face. When brought up to the principal, Mrs. Griffith, she does nothing. There is actually a student here that has been having an ongoing issue with this individual, and the parents have tried to speak to the principal, and nothing has come about it. She does absolutely nothing. There's other parents that were unfortunately have not made it here today that also have ongoing issues with the principal not addressing this individual. Unfortunately, now this has progressed to now sexual assault of a female student. So if Ms. Griffith, principal of John Muir, would have taken serious the allegations of other students bullying and other things, this could have possibly been prevented and saved trauma for that individual. Muir has no transparency. Why are we finding out information like sexual assault from news outlets? Our kids are at risk as long as this individual attends school. And I ask for the board members to do the right thing and remove this predator from our children's schools. We shouldn't have to remove our children. The predator should be removed. For the safety of all the students before he offends again, because he will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lopez?
Hello, board members. Thanks for allowing us to speak. I know it's really late. However, we're here for the same topic with this alleged assailant who sexually assaulted this 13-year-old girl, grabbed her from the throat, put her against the ground in school grounds. Our kids are supposed to be safe at our schools. You guys being parents, because I'm pretty sure your parents, grandparents, you want the best for your kids. We go to work, full-time job, our kids go to school, we're thinking they're gonna be safe, and they're not safe because they allowed this individual to still be on campus with elementary school students because we decided that we wanted the best for our kids to attend a good school. And John Muir Academy is a good school, but the issue that arises is not making it a safe school for our kids. I'm here as a parent, as an advocate for our children. I've been to Sacramento. I have fought for the safeguard of our children at churches. I'm here as a parent for the safety of our kids. What is it being done? When we ask the school officials what is being done as a precaution for our kids, you know what we're told? Nothing. They say they're being taken care of. No, it's not, because I've spoken to my kids' teachers. And I'm the one telling my kids to tell their teachers, you don't go to the bathroom by yourself. You don't go to the hallways by yourself. You have to have a buddy system. Why do I have to tell my 3rd grader, my 5th grader to do this when it is the school responsibility? And when parents come and speak to Jill Baker and ask her, what's being done? Why is this individual still at school? What does Miss Jill Baker state? Are you forgetting Miss Jill Baker yesterday what you told parents?
You know,
if you're so concerned,
I'm going to request that you direct your comments to the chair and not individual.
I understand. I apologize for that. Okay, but when it was asked, what are we going to do for the safety of our kids? If you're so concerned about the safety of your kids, then you move your kids to a different district. Why do we have to do this? Why? That's not fair for us as parents. For one individual. Why? Because this individual is probably related to the principal from what is being said. This individual has caused issues over issues. If you guys go on his record, you're going to see everything that he's done, how he's bullied other kids, how he continues to bully kids. And you know what he does? He just laughs, because I've seen this kid, when he was told not to go on campus, he was still going on campus, and he was over here trying to threaten and also scare the victim's siblings. That's not right in him having a grin and still in campus.
Thank you. I don't know if you caught what we said earlier about public comment on items not listed on the agenda, but we cannot engage in conversation as per our legal constraints. So we appreciate that you're here. We are listening. You have now addressed the board. I see that we had staff taking notes, and this is a delicate matter, but it will be looked into. Yeah. Yes. Mr. Zaid?
I just want to provide a clarification that I met with many of the parents outside, took down names and phone numbers, and plan on following up with the parents.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here, but we will go on with our agenda. And we are now at item 15.2, approval of memorandum of understanding with the Teachers Association of Long Beach protocols for inclusive teaching programs. And this is for our CCT, the collaborative co-teaching models, and that's where we have a special ed teacher paired with a gen ed teacher. And that is an action item, so I'm going to need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just have, can someone in the district explain the inclusive teaching program for parents, just for them to know what this, the inclusive teaching program entails?
Steve, I'm going to suggest that Dr. Simon address the question.
Thank you for your question, Board Member Lopez. So the inclusive teaching program is for our students at the secondary level, whether it's middle or high school, to where there is a general education teacher and also a special education teacher working together to provide instruction right in the classroom that includes, again, both set of students.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. We don't need a roll call vote on this one, or do we?
You don't need a roll call, but you need a motion.
We,
Oh, did you move?
Yeah, we have
Oh, you
one.
moved, okay, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't need a roll call.
okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And how about a preferential vote for our student representative?
Aye.
Thank you. That passes 5-0 and a preferential vote. Next on the agenda, we have item 15.3, approval of memorandums of understanding with the California School Employees Association Outdoor Education Program, increased hours for instructional aides and stipend pay. And this is exciting because this is pertaining to Camp High Hill at the Oaks, our YMCA camp where we send our fifth graders, and it is a Monday through Friday overnight camp. And so, Mr. Rockenbach, did you want to add anything else to that, or?
Well, part of the reason for this motion was to understand that our staff that go up, both our certificated staff, which we approved earlier in the year, and our classified staff are spending extra hours to support this program. So we wanted to recognize that by additional compensation. So that's really what these parameters in the MOU outline.
Okay, so this is also an action item. We need a motion.
Move to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And our student representative with a preferential vote?
Aye.
So that's 5-0 and a preferential vote from our student representative. Item 15.4, disclosure of the proposals of the Teachers Association of Long Beach to the district for initial contract negotiations. And this is for information only, so we will not be voting on this. Does anybody have any questions on that one? We can move on. 15.5, disclosure of the proposals of the district to the Teachers Association of Long Beach for initial contract negotiations, and this is also for information only. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, so I just wanted to voice my opinion on this one in regards to the opening of the contract around Article 5, days and hours of employment. I know that this has been a tricky one, to say the least, from a negotiation standpoint, so I won't address that piece. But I'm more concerned about the impact that it's going to have on our communities and our families. As we create more pupil-free days, we have to acknowledge the fact that a lot of our families also are highly dependent upon our public school system to be a child care component as they go on to work and provide for our families. So if we create more pupil-free days, it's going to have a trickle-down effect on our families and our communities, and I just truly believe that this is something that we need to keep in mind as we go into the negotiation process.
Okay, thank you for that. Ms. Lopez?
Can you just elaborate on, explain compensation, update language regarding premium cost sharing to address encroachment on district's annual maximum brought on by rising health care premiums?
So within the contract, there's language that outlines the maximum amount that the district will pay towards health benefit coverage, and that amount increases 3.5% every calendar year. The challenge we've been having is our costs for the overall insurance plans have increased by an average of about 6.5% to 7% a year. So what we're trying to look at collectively with our labor partners is how can we look at ways to possibly defray some of those costs and mitigate that increase so that we can try to avoid that dam. But we do have to address that because that is something that we could be facing in about the next 2 years.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing further, we'll go on to item number 15.6, approval of resolution 100423-A, resolution of the governing board of the Long Beach Unified School District designating specific material or materials, products, things, or services for use on public works projects pursuant to Public Contract Code Section 3400, and this one in particular is about our electronic door lock system that we've been piloting, and the resolution states all the benefits to the district for going with a single product. And this is an action item, so we're going to need a motion.
I move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm gonna be a little facetious here, Madam Chair. I always love the way these read when it says things.
Things,
Yeah.
things, yes.
Products, things.
Yes, it just about covers it. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And our student representative?
Aye.
That passes 5-0 plus a preferential vote. Thank you, everyone. And now we're at report of board members, and we will start with our student representative, Axel from Jordan. I'm not sure if we highlighted that last time, but absolutely so proud of you. I'm not going to say anything further because I don't want to gush, and I already have. So there you go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So last week, Wednesday, our Rotary Roots came to Jordan to learn more about our campus and its pathways. And our pathway ambassadors presented our pathways and led tours around campus. Our students were able to show how Jordan is changing its narrative through its new facilities, programs, and events. I would like to give the Jordan ambassadors a shout out for doing such a great job, really just showing our Rotary Roots what we're all about. And I would also like to commend our associative student body for putting on a successful homecoming fair, game, and dance. Thank you.
Thank you, Axel. Mr. Miller, you have to follow him.
Yes, I'll be brief today. Well, first off, I just wanted to thank our mayor and Rex Richardson for being there for the coin toss for Polly's homecoming game. I'll be honest with you, that was a tough one for me to watch as they were playing my boys in Milliken Rams, and so I was jokingly saying that's the one game I wanted to end in a tie. But all things considered, it was a great game. And I was very much appreciative of seeing a lot of friends and family members in the audience. I even saw my colleague in the audience having way more fun than I was on the Poly side. But all things considered, it was a very nice event, and I just appreciated him coming out to support our young people. Over the past few weeks, we've had a number of back-to-school nights. I know for me, it was great visiting my daughter's school, but also the schools in my district for both elementary and middle school. And I must say, I am highly, highly impressed with how things are kicking off thus far. I think that every year, coming off of the summer, especially with schools in some of our tougher neighborhoods, it's always a tough transition, because the summer, unfortunately, does a negative toll on a lot of our at-risk youth. But as we make the transition back into a structured environment and programs that are focused around uplifting them, it was great not only just learning of some of the great successes that our campuses are having, from the Washingtons to the Stevens, but, it was just humbling to see the great efforts from our teachers and our students in particular. So it was just really, really nice to be able to pay a visit to those campuses, and I look forward to more visits like that. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Dr. Benitez.
Thank you, Ms. Craighead. Just a few things from my end. First off, want to express appreciation for the conversation we had tonight around our board goals and guardrails. We're almost there, Madam Chair. We're almost there.
Home stretch.
Yes. So thank you, colleagues, for the engagement and for the discussion. Over the last few weeks, I've had an opportunity to visit schools in my area. The most recent visit with Dr. Baker was to Herrera Nieto and to Stevenson. So thank you, Ms. Cargas, Ms. Dalton, for hosting us. You got to see the new playground at Stevenson in full action. there. I know, Dr. Baker, you have some facilities follow-ups with the school. We had an opportunity to visit classrooms at all grade levels. And then in our visit to Herrera Nieto, saw an awesome example of a community garden and actually a full class out there. So thank you to Ground Education for all the work you're doing with our schools and families and students. And then we also observed a really engaging ELAC meeting, our English Learner Advisory Committee meeting. And I was sharing with Dr. Baker, I mean, if we want to see parent engagement out of school site in action, those señoras at Herrera Nieto were on fire. Everything from IEPs to GATE to school site council to reviewing bylaws. And so Ms. Cargas was like right there every step of the way, full on engaged, productive discussion. I heard them call each other in to going to DLAC meetings. So just big props to the parents and caregivers that were so engaged at that ELAC. So if any of us wanted to see what parent engagement, authentic parent engagement looks like, I wish we could have captured some of that on video, Dr. Baker. So, just a good illustrative example of the possibilities that are going on all over our district. I just can't clone myself and go everywhere, but I wanted to acknowledge that. Also this morning, was able to attend the Best Start Region 4 Summit convened by the Nonprofit Partnership and Long Beach Forward. So just want to express my appreciation for all the wonderful work that's going on every day in our communities around early education. Again, authentic examples of engaged community members, parents, caregivers concerned about early education and having opportunities and access to high quality early education. So we got a chance to see some of the community's visions. And I'll quote, one of the post-its that I saw up from Region 4 was the importance of centering student voice, right? So in alignment, right, for our 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, that student voice matters just as much as our graduating seniors here. So big ups to all the community members, parents, and all the organizational support, real-time interpretation going on. And so just wanted to, and our district staff was there. Dr. Salazar was there, learning, observing, in partnership with our communities. And I'm gonna miss something, but I think that's it, Madam Chair.
Are you sure? Because that's it. Your time's up. Ten.
Go ahead.
9.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Otto?
Yeah, I want to thank, I also want to make a comment about the discussion that we had about our goals and guardrails, which is, I'm a graduate of that Council of Great City Schools program where they teach you about outcomes-oriented governance. And it was a tough program. It was a lot of work. It lasted for a year. Every time I thought I got it, I found ways that I didn't get it, and I had to go back and keep looking at it. And I'm so pleased that we are on this path. I particularly want to thank just this week Brian Moskowitz and Veronica Madrigal. Did I get her name right? Last name right? Who helped me understand the way that this reading stuff works and how complicated it is. It's you think that you understand it, and then you find something else to read. We know that there's been a whole lot of controversy about reading in schools in the last few years, and so it was really nice to have really expert opinions about this and help inform me about how this is. And I think the board did a good job of working through these issues, and we're off to a good start with our goals and guardrails. And I think that is being communicated to our community. That Dr. Benitez and I laugh sometimes that we went out last year. Was it a year and a half ago to talk to the and we just got killed. We had a series of meetings, and
those are Doug Otto's words, not mine.
Is that the word killed that you? Oh. Yeah, we had a lot of the same people come to meetings. We have 65,000 students and caregivers and parents and everybody else, and we just couldn't get the meaningful feedback that we were looking for. But now that we're in the middle of the strategic planning process, and in particular we've gone through the portrait part of it, which lasted for quite some time, but I think was extremely successful. I feel very confident that we have the voices of the community. We've heard what they've had to say. Student voice was a big part of that, and it was touching to listen to how engaged students were and interested in and articulate about what was going on. So there's that. So this again was the beginning of a new direction for the school district in terms of how governance works, and so I'm very appreciative of that and the help that I got this week. I too have been out trying to. I've learned in the last couple of years that the best time to go to schools is not at the opening of schools. That people are busy, and so I've waited, and I've now been going out to schools. I had a very delightful visit earlier this week with Tracy Hall, the principal at Gant, and learned things from her, learned things about reading from her and what's going on her campus with teachers and whatnot. So we are fully back in school, and good things are happening, and I think we're handling what's going on very well, and so that's all I've got for tonight. Thanks.
Okay, Ms. Lopez.
Thank you. Well, I had the opportunity to attend a number of elementary back-to-school nights, including Los Cerritos, Longfellow, Dooley, and Muir. The classrooms in all of these schools looked great, and the faculty and staff were very well prepared to welcome students. Thank you to all of those who worked hard to make the evening informative for parents. I also attended the Sankofa Village meeting and appreciate the time many of our parents and staff members, some of you here, give to support our Black students. Their work is critical and without a doubt plays a role in their success in our schools. Congratulations to Long Beach Poly's international ambassadors. Last Friday, they were recognized at Vet Stadium for their academic achievement, for their extracurricular activities, and for their leadership. Ambassadors, we're very proud of you. And on another note, I'd like to urge LBUSD to consider hiring additional staff to supervise students during passing period, lunch, and after school. Student safety should be a very high priority, and I know it is, but I believe that students would benefit from having additional staff, and that would help improve the safety of our schools. And then finally, last week I asked for the high school counselor to student ratio, and my question may have not been clear. I was requesting the ratios for pathway, specialized program, counselors to student ratio. So it is my hope that we can get those numbers to determine if there may be a need to hire additional counselors to support our students. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have a report this evening, but I would like to encourage folks to volunteer. So get involved in your child's school, maybe ask the teacher if you can help. I know that when my kids were in elementary school, teachers needed somebody to help with sight words, power words, or whatever, or one-on-one time with students that, teachers don't always have time for. Excuse me. But also, we have a lot of organizations, a lot of opportunities. DLAC, DCAC, PTA, all kinds of stuff. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Baker.
Thank you. I have several things, but I will be succinct tonight. I want to start by pointing to the banners that are behind you at the dais. This is really an important month in our district. It is a celebration of Disability History and Awareness Month. And so our schools have materials and resources and things that center our students with disabilities in ways that we hope will be completely uplifted and a reminder of the importance of both the historical and awareness of our students with disabilities. So I want to start with that. Axel, you were very humble in talking about Rotary Roots. And so Rotary Roots is an annual program where Rotarians select an area that they'd like to know more about in the community. And so Axel and his Pathway Ambassador peers hosted about 12 Rotarians, many of whom had not been in schools of recent, and who came to Jordan to see about the good work that is going on, both from a facility perspective, but more importantly, a learning perspective. And Axel was incredibly articulate in sharing about the school, about the students' efforts to change the narrative. And and took on a tour of the Ames, the new building, and showed the Rotarians around. The kinds of things that were said at the end of the visit after 2 hours with Pathway Ambassadors were that it was unimaginable what they would experience at Jordan High School. When they walked in, they had no idea what students would show them, how they would talk about their experience in school, what pathways look like, what career technical education looks like in action. And then across the group that was there, they said they felt proud of Long Beach Unified based on their time at Jordan High School. So you did an exceptional job, Axel, in being a host along with your peers, speaking to a group of accomplished professionals who were just really delighted to interact with you and your peers. So a wonderful ombudsman to the community at large about education. So thank you for that. Just want to remind our community we have back to school night for our high schools tomorrow evening. So let's get out and support teachers and administrators and those who would love to see families in our high schools. We sometimes have a dip in attendance at high school. It is really important for our parents to be out hearing from staff around what's happening in our high schools, how they can interact with teachers and other staff. So get out and attend back to school night at high schools. Last night, Mr. Miller and about 55 parents were at our Parent University workshop. So I just want to really commend the Equity Engagement and Partnerships Office. This was the second in a series of 2, focused on really the beginning of the school year and what parents need to be effectively engaged with families. And what I saw happen in the room was just tremendous support for families, a presentation, but also very customized supports in the room, including the feedback from session 1 was that parents needed a lot of tech support. And so last night we observed a table that had staff from our research office and those who interact with technology in the back, helping parents as they needed help on their phones, getting their Canvas signed up for right there, helping them to reset their password. And so many of the parents that were there who came in not knowing how to interact with their student left fully signed on to Canvas, knowing what it means to be an observer on Canvas, to know how your student's doing, how to interact with teachers, and it was really just amazing to see. So that series is over, but there are many more Parent University classes to come, and so check our website, follow there are emails that get sent out and School Messenger about the upcoming workshop. So good for them. And then lastly, I'll just end. Parents in the district should have received their own copy, the Parent Overview of Education Reimagined in LBUSD. It has a summary of the portraits. So thank you for those of you who have mentioned them tonight. Our graduate portrait, the adult portrait, the system portrait, and also speaks to the core values. So this is something we want families to hold on to, keep it in a place where it can be referenced not only this year, but in the years to come as we continue to socialize the vision into our system and to create a strategic plan that gets our district to attain what we want for our graduates, our adults, and the system at large. That's my report. Thank you. Thanks for a good meeting. Thanks for your interaction around goals and guardrails. We are on a path towards completion, and it is really good to see all of the grappling and for us to be thinking about what you're working on as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, this concludes our meeting for this evening. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is October 18th in 2 weeks. So without objection, I will adjourn the meeting. Great. Good evening, everyone.